as lesson before it is mourned. I began to notice that certain interpretations of suffering, especially the idea everything happens for a reason, were not universally helpful. For some, they were quietly harmful. This book is not an argument against spirituality. I still believe in intuition. I still value grounding. I still respect the role of meaning in human life. But I no longer believe meaning must be extracted from every wound. What interests me now is not theology. It is psychological impact. How do certain narratives affect nervous systems? What happens when growth is demanded instead of supported? What is the difference between intuition and coercion? These questions emerge not from rebellion, but from observation, not from anger, but from sorting. Especially for those who have lived through trauma, illness, betrayal, or institutional failure, and were encouraged to find the lesson before they were allowed to grieve. These distinctions matter. This book does not offer a new doctrine. It offers differentiation. Between chaos and choice, between healing and performance, between meaning and shame, not everything happens for a reason. Some things happen because of biology, some because of probability, some because of human decisions, some because system fails. What follows is not a rejection of belief. It's a refinement of interpretation. And sometimes refinement is what steadies us most. Random Evil. Not Everything Happens for a Reason, by Jennifer Irene Stewart. Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Sentence That Silences Pain. There are phrases we learn before we understand them. They arrive in childhood, they echo in churches, they float through self-help seminars and hospital hallways. They sound wise. Everything happens for a reason. It is a sentence designed to settle the air, to soften the shock, to close the open question, to restore order when something has just broken. And when something painful happens, we reach for it almost automatically, because we are uncomfortable with open wounds. Psychologically, this makes sense. Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures. Cognitive science has demonstrated again and again that the brain prefers order over randomness. When something disrupts our sense of predictability, the mind begins scanning for explanation. Even elusive patterns can feel stabilizing. Randomness, by contrast, activates threat. Order regulates us. Randomness does not. So when tragedy strikes, the sentence appears. Everything happens for a reason. It functions like emotional insulation, but insulation for whom? When someone you love dies suddenly, when a diagnosis arrives without warning, when betrayal fractures a relationship, the body does not ask for philosophy. It asks for safety. Trauma research constantly shows that when a person experiences shock or loss, the nervous system shifts into survival states: flight, fight, freeze, collapse. In those moments, what regulates the system is not explanation. It is co-regulation, presence, accurate witnessing. Validation reduces psychological stress responses. Dismissal, even subtle dismissal, can intensify them. Now, considering what happens internally when someone in pain hears, there's a reason for this. The implication may be gentle. It may be unintended, but it's there. This is necessary. This is assigned. This is somehow correct. And when something that feels catastrophic is framed as correct, Something inside the sufferer often recoils, not because they reject meaning, but because they feel alone in their reaction. The phrase frequently soothes the speaker. It restores a sense of order to the witness. If this is purposeful, then the world is still structured. If this is purposeful, then chaos has not breached the perimeter. If this is purposeful, then we are not as vulnerable as we appear. In social psychology, there is a well-documented bias called the just world hypothesis. It describes our tendency to believe that the world is fundamentally fair, that people get what they deserve and deserve what they get. This bias protects us from existential anxiety. If good behavior ensures safety, then we can manage risk. But real life does not consistently cooperate with that belief. Children suffer. Natural disasters level entire communities. Accidents occur without moral logic. When we cannot reconcile this with our need for fairness, we insert a reason, not always consciously, but urgently. The problem is not meaning itself. The problem is timing. When someone is in acute pain, the nervous system is not looking for metaphysics. It is looking for acknowledgement. There is no reason can feel terrifying to the observer, but there is a reason can feel alienating to the one bleeding. There is a difference between comfort and containment. Comfort says, I am here. This is hard. You are not alone. Containment says, let's close this quickly. Let's wrap it in a narrative. Let's make it tidy. Grief is not tidy. It's disorganizing. It destabilizes identity. It interrupts story. It fractures continuity. To rush explanation is to interrupt a process the body is still metabolizing. This does not mean people who say the phrase are cruel. Most are trying to help. Most are trying to calm themselves because randomness is frightening. If suffering is random, then control is thinner than we want to believe. If suffering is random, then being good does not guarantee protection. If suffering is random, then we are living in a fragile world governed by probability as much as providence. This is not easy to sit with. So we reach for a story, a lesson, a vibration, a karmic contract, a soul agreement, anything that makes chaos feel organized. But there is something profoundly dignifying about allowing a person's pain to remain unjustified, about saying, this shouldn't have happened, not because the universe is malicious, not because existence is meaningless, but because fairness matters to human beings. And when something violates fairness, the violation deserves to be named before it is reframed. When someone in pain hears, this shouldn't have happened, their body often exhales because someone is finally aligned with their reality, not correcting it, not elevating it, not transforming it, just acknowledging it. Everything happens for a reason, attempts to stabilize the cosmos, but sometimes what stabilizes a human being is simpler. I see you. This hurts. I'm not going to explain it away. If this book does anything, it will not attempt to dismantle belief. It will not attempt to prove the universe is random or ordered. It will ask a quieter question. When someone is suffering, what actually helps? And what merely protects the witness from discomfort? Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is resist the urge to resolve, to let pain stand without narrative, to allow grief to be grief, not lesson, not assignment, not elevation, just loss. And that, strangely, is often where real healing begins. We'll pause here. If something in this chapter stirred discomfort, you don't need to resolve it tonight. You don't need to make meaning from it. Just notice what surfaced. We'll continue next week.